Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show for another independent, unsponsored review, and this time we revisit the GMT. Now, when I reviewed and compared the newest Pepsi from 2019 to my own vintage GMT-Master II, it was somewhat of a disappointment. While it was undoubtedly mechanically superior in every way to my own watch, the new colours and size lacked the charm of my vintage predecessor. But during a recent visit to a Monster Mania convention, I met Kane Hodder, and we took a wristwatch check together. Sure enough, the guy who famously plays Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th movies wears a Rolex Batman in real life. So this reawakened my interest, and 2 years later, from the previous review, how do I feel about the newest version of the Batman, bizarrely called the Batgirl, from my good friends and authorized dealer for Rolex, Moya Jewelers. And I gotta say a massive thank you to them for lending it in. Now, did anybody notice it was Friday the 13th on my day date? And I did not plan it. That was completely by coincidence, but I mean, yeah, spooky. Now, I'll do a quick wristwatch check wearing the Explorer on the SOE strap, which is a new strap I co-designed, military-inspired strap for Wrist Candy Watch Club. And actually, looking at those blue tones, well, it definitely will work with the GMT. I might have to try that before I send the GMT home. What else should I say? Yeah, of course, let's have a recap. Let's reacquaint ourselves with the significance and history of this illustrious watch. The Rolex GMT is another world-leading and pioneering timepiece that was born during the greatest formative age of wristwatches, the 1950s, and has subsequently evolved with 4 key generations. With advances in aircraft technology and with the jet age just beginning for the civilian traveler, airplanes as a result began flying longer and longer distances. The Rolex GMT was originally designed in collaboration with Pan Am Airways for their pilots and issued to their crews on long-haul flights. The key feature of this watch was that it allowed the wearer to simultaneously reference more than one time zone instantly. This was by no means anything new. We've talked endlessly about the great Glycine Airman from a year earlier in 1953, but the Rolex did something new, and that was to add a 4th 24-hour moving hour hand to work in conjunction with that 24-hour bezel. Now the wearer could instantly set and track multiple time zones. The GMT name is derived from Greenwich Mean Time, which is also known as Coordinated Universal Time. And this time zone is required for all aviation navigation, weather forecasts, schedules, and so on. The first GMT Master model was the reference 6542 and was produced from 1954 to 1959. The stainless steel GMT Master sported a 38mm oyster case and was water resistant to 50 meters, as well as having the trend-setting Bakelite bezel insert, red for day and blue for night. However, this bezel soon proved unacceptable as it was easy to crack. Consequently, a new metal bezel was introduced in 1956. To differentiate the 2-hour hands, the slower-moving 24-hour hand was now a bright cherry red with an arrow on the tip. The first GMT Master was also fondly named the Pussy Galore, as it was famously worn by the character, played by the actress Honor Blackman, in the 1964 James Bond film Goldfinger.
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
In 1969, the second generation was introduced with the reference 1675. It featured the caliber 1565 until 1964, when it was replaced by the caliber 1575, which enabled it to be hackable for the first time. Available in several variations, the key main changes were the addition of the lug guards and a larger, more legible 24-hour hand. So in terms of pop culture, the GMT certainly had its fair share of the limelight. I mean, there are just so many films to go into. I mean, Marathon Man, that iconic scene, of course, where he bribes somebody with his watch, a taxi driver, so he can escape danger. There's Dennis Hopper in Speed. What else? Of course, there's Marlon Brando. I mean, how can we forget, with his famous bezel-less GMT in Apocalypse Now. Anyway, name your favorites. There's too many to go into. But interestingly enough, Chuck Yeager, the pioneering pilot, was a GMT wearer. He was featured heavily in some of the early GMT advertising. There was also the former chairman of Ferrari, the very aristocratic Luca Montezemolo. Also, let's not forget, a Rolex GMT-Master reference 1675 was worn in space on Apollo 14 in 1971 by lunar module pilot Edgar Mitchell. By 1981 came the biggest change yet for the watch with the release of the third generation. The reference 16750 debuted that year with the massively important 3075 movement. Now, not only did it offer hacking and a quick set date, but crucially allowed the user the capability of an independently adjustable hour hand, which could be adjusted in 1 hour increments without stopping the second hand or disturbing the minute or 24-hour hand. Unlike its predecessor, its water resistance was boosted to 100 meters and had extensive refinements when it came to the dial. The later models were greatly modernized with applied white gold markers, superluminova instead of the now dated tritium luminescence, and sapphire crystal, not the acrylic of before. Another big change was the addition of a new color, black and red. The original GMT-Master II was also known as the Fat Lady, as its case was thicker to the original GMT-Master. Nothing cements iconic status like having a nickname, right? And by this time, there was the Pepsi, there was the Coke, there was the root beer, there was the Patriot for the, blinged out version, of course. Just as the GMT seemed it could not evolve anymore, the fourth and current generation was launched in 2005. Initially in gold only first with the 116718, but it wasn't until 2007 that the stainless steel version was made available with the 116710. Incidentally, this was the very first Rolex GMT I ever owned, before returning to the more vintage Pepsi I currently have. The changes were the most dramatic yet and encapsulated perfectly by the watch we are looking at today, which is a revamped version of the first Batman released in 2018. Now I'm going to interrupt here just to remind you, I hope you have clicked like on this video. It's the best way to help me out. And now YouTube actually tells its creators, content creators that is like me, that sounded a bit weird, that the people who comment and like the most, I get a little heart next to their comments. So those of you who have liked the videos, I get to see who those are, who those people are. So now I prioritize them when answering questions, replying, because obviously I cannot reply to all of you, but do make sure you like the videos and I will certainly try and reply to your comments. Diameter is just a smidgen over 40 millimeters because the bezel actually overhangs just a little bit, but it's obviously for ergonomics because it's very easy to grip there. We've got a height of 11.8, which is really nice actually. It's quite slender. Now lug to lug is 47.7 and the lug width is 20 millimeters. In terms of materials, well, it's the same as all modern Rolexes. We have the 904L stainless steel, the mix of high polish on the sides, brushed on the top. That's continued on the Jubilee bracelet, which is a really interesting addition. We'll talk about that in just a moment. In terms of the weight, we're looking at, well, I've taken out links, so for me it's about 100 grams. I think I took out about 4 or 5 links. On the full weight, it's closer to just over between 140 and 150 grams, obviously depending on how many links you take out. It's quite a heavy piece and it definitely has some heft to it, mainly due to that case, which we'll talk about later. We have the 5-link Jubilee bracelet, my favorite Jubilee, but honestly guys, it's a million miles away from the jingly jangly days of old. I mean, if I just hold it up, you see there's very little wobble on there. Actually, I don't mind. I like the kind of tinny bad quality. It's part of the I don't know, I think it's because I'm an 80s baby and I'm used to all those date justs, countless date justs. But anyway, that's a whole different video. Now we have quite an interesting clasp. This is not the clasp you typically see on a Jubilee. I've never seen it on a sports watch, this combination. I have seen it on some of the newer date justs. Not sure if you can see that, but there you go. So we have that latch system, very effective, very efficient with a fold over, and of course using the crown as to get purchase God, I have missed these modern. I'm so used to my vintage Rolexes. It's been a while since I owned a modern one. These are just fantastic, beautifully constructed, and we have, if I just show you here, an extra 5mm easy link adjustment, so you can have it extended or you fold it back in. Really great for hot weather, because obviously as your wrist expands and shrinks with differing temperatures. So if we have a closer look on the dial there, you'll see very generous. This is the new chromalite applied with the white metal, with the white gold, to prevent tarnishing over time. Really does last. I'd probably say this is one of the best luminescent materials I've ever seen. Possibly even better than Seiko's Lumibright, but I guess we'll have to do a side-by-side comparison to really figure that out. We've got that easy to differentiate shapes of the Mercedes hands. You know where the hours are, you know where the GMT hand, everything's different. Fantastic orientation, obviously because of that diver style triangle, the quintessential layout for a sports Rolex. Always works. In terms of the glass, we have a flat sapphire. Does not have AR coating. I wish it kind of did a bit on the inside. It would have been nice. You do get a bit of glare with these new Rolexes. We have a 24 click bi-directional, so it's back and forth, very gently ratcheted. You don't even hear it. You just feel it. Just goes into place. It's been a while since I've owned a modern GMT, so really nicely done. And of course with those deep engraved, very modern, almost kind of sci-fi retro. It does remind me a little bit of kind of, silent running type of numerals there for the 24 hours. Vastly better than the age-old 120 click, which I've never understood why you need 120 click on these bi-directional ratcheted bezels of old, but yeah, a million miles away from that. In terms of how it wears, well, the Jubilee is just fantastic. There's just the right amount of fluidity, but at the same time it's really solid feeling. It's got quite a bold presence, so different to this old thing, even though I still love the old vintage Jubilees. And once fitted correctly with the screwed links and everything, it's just fantastic. Something I really do appreciate about the modern GMTs is that crown is bigger. I've always thought the crown on my GMT was a little bit undersized. If you look at it side by side, it's just God, it's so different, isn't it? And obviously for the insert we have the Cerachrome, which again we'll discuss a little bit later on. So in terms of movement, this is where it gets really impressive, because we have the new from 2018 released at Baselworld, the 3285 caliber. This is a replacement of the 3186, and of course it's COSC plus or minus 2 seconds a day. We know all of that stuff. It is a bigger movement, but that allows it to have more space for a larger barrel, so they've boosted the power reserve to 70 hours. It includes all the modern tech that Rolex do so well as incorporating this long tradition of very, very solidly built movements. Just look at the architecture with that full balance bridge. This movement alone had 10 new patents filed during its development. A really, really impressive bit of kit. And that is down to the new chronogy escapement, which is supposedly 15% more efficient. We have the parachrome hairspring, 10 times more anti-magnetic than your traditional hairspring, and of course the Paraflex shock absorbers. And trust me, these movements are tough. Now, I haven't actually owned this particular caliber, but I did have a modern movement in my ceramic Submariner, and if you guys remember the story, I fell off the back of a truck in the middle of the Nevada desert, and it hit the ground really, really hard, and it was still operating with hidden COSC, didn't skip a beat. And it goes without saying, it's 28,800 vibrations now, a hacking manual wind, all the rest of it. And you have that rapid setting for the hour hand, instantaneous date change, top movement. This new GMT very much is the confluence of all of Rolex's advancements and newest technology encapsulated into one single watch. The bulkier and thicker lug case was actually developed for dive watches originally, hence the triplock screw-down crown that gives it the respectable 100 meters water resistance. While the maxi dial remains mainly the same as before, the only thing I have noticed was the minute hand being ever so slightly longer, naturally improving precision. Also, to signify this new movement, Rolex have placed a very small and subtle printed crown between the Swiss and made at the 6 o'clock. The main change on the outside is the shorter lugs, which Rolex have refined the case compared to the original maxi case proportions of 2007. This welcomed revision is mainly due to the integration of the new end links. At the fundamental level, the design language of this watch follows the very first vision and function of the first GMT from the 1950s, but this time we have blue for day and black for night on the bezel, along with the 24-hour hand also in blue to match it. The color scheme is a lot more discreet than the sometimes divisive Pepsi combination. The glossy blue is somewhere between Egyptian and cobalt blue. Unlike the ceramic Pepsi, where pigmentation is extremely limited on some of the colors due to the difficulty in the manufacturing processes of ceramics, the same goes for Rolex and their proprietary Cerachrome material. I think they have succeeded here. For those of you who remember, I was not a fan of the red at all. It felt slightly cartoonish and lacked any pizzazz or personality of the reds used in the past. Generally speaking, at first glance it looks identical to the now discontinued Batman, but in typical Rolex fashion, the choice to put it on a Jubilee when this was first launched was used to differentiate it from the previous Batman. As a massive fan of this style of bracelet, I think it works even better on this contemporary generation, as it balances the masculine sports watch bulk with the more delicate 5-link elegance that the Jubilee always inevitably brings. A bracelet that, after all, is usually reserved for more dressy pieces rather than actual sports watches. So what are the positives? Well, first and foremost, for me, okay, I haven't been traveling, not nearly as much. I mean, a lot of us haven't because of obvious circumstances, but I use my GMT constantly because I have family in the UK, in Italy, and if I want to talk to them, it's really useful to know just instantly, timing Zoom calls, FaceTime, all the rest of it, what time it is over there, so it still is relevant even if you're not traveling. The biggest positive whenever buying a Rolex is obviously the inherent value retention. I've never bought a Rolex and lost money, so I can personally attest to that. The exceptional quality and the outstanding situational and sartorial versatility. I do feel this is way better than the old Pepsi. The Pepsi does tend to clash with some colors, and blue and black is always a winning formula. It has fantastic presence, it makes a statement without being too flashy or gaudy, which is all too often these days with Rolex. As an actual tool to use it, well, aside from the accuracy and fantastic performance of every component, the anti-magnetism is crucial for pilots because all the electronics in the cockpit can dramatically affect mechanical watches. But even for every day, you're using your laptop. Magnetism is everywhere in this digital world of ours. And lastly, that 70 hours power reserve, fantastic, because you can wear this Monday to Friday, take it off, wear something else on the weekend. Monday morning, again, it's still going. I love it when a lot of these, we've seen it in some of the new Seikos, these massive power reserves. That just makes them so much more wearable, and easier to put in rotation. So let's talk about negatives. It's a shame the bezel is not loomed like the very, very first, 1950s GMT. I think they're really missing a trick. They can do it with the Pelagos in the little brother brand Tudor, so why not here? I would imagine it is quite tricky to do with the Cerachrome. Maybe it would make it too thick, or I don't know the technology involved. Had they done this would have just absolutely been perfect. Another thing, and this only affects the smaller wristed, when you do take out links, the weight distribution automatically makes the top heavier, and this is a big problem with new Rolexes for guys with smaller wrists, because the head of the watch thus becomes very top heavy. Doesn't affect the larger wristed because obviously you're going to have more bracelet and it's going to sit differently. And my last critique really is not actually about the watch, but more about its name, the Batgirl. I think it's a little bit silly. I don't think it works. I can understand its genesis because it apparently is more feminine on a Jubilee. Whatever that means. I know some very, very serious masculine guys that love Jubilee bracelets. So I think that's a load of hogwash. And it was a nickname started actually by the trolls, the watch trolls in forums. So I'm not sure why it caught on. It's just very, very bizarre. I think the Dark Knight, as it's, not a remake, but as it's an upgrade, would have been fitting, or maybe Batman Begins or Batman Forever or something to that effect. Guys, what do you think of the nickname? Please do add your opinions in the comments. Now you probably noticed I haven't discussed its price because, well, it's going to fluctuate so much by the time I've actually edited this video. It's probably already increased or decreased, who knows. God, that would be, that's a bad sign if Rolex prices are going. Yeah, the world really will be ending. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, and that's because it's a gift and a curse when it comes to the brand. So I wanted to ask you guys your opinion. Is the asking price for a proprietary made watch of this level, is it worth it? What do you guys think? Share in the comments. So in conclusion, I put off reviewing this watch as quite frankly I was not taken by the new Pepsi, as I've said before, when I borrowed one shortly after its initial release. The hype surrounding it, lackluster colours and cumbersome bulk made me appreciate my own increasingly vintage model far more. It's funny that when you refine something to such a superior level, in almost every way, it ends up losing some of its charm and ineffable personality. Are aluminium bezels dated? Sure. Is the thinner case of mine less trendy? Possibly. Is the movement antiquated? Absolutely. But sometimes it's the imperfections that actually make something charming or even more likable. I look at new Rolex, then I look at my own, and I think of that line from the Terminator. I'm old, but I'm not obsolete. However, this so-called Batgirl is a totally different matter entirely. It really is almost absurd how just a few millimeters here and there, a change of bracelet, a simple color change from red to black, and a finely tweaked engine that you don't even get to see makes me rethink everything I felt about the newer Pepsi. So the question for me is, am I going to sell my GMT an upgrade? And you know what? I didn't think I would be interested, but I'd be lying if I didn't say the thought had crossed my mind. If I was going to get a GMT, this would undoubtedly be it. At the moment, I'm still obsessed with Yacht Masters, two-tone subs, Datejusts. I've got this watch crush on the 36mm two-tone Datejuster Wimbledon. I just love that combination of grey, British Racing Green numerals and two-tone. I think it's, and I'm waiting. I want to see if it's a passing fad or it's possibly true love, That's always how it goes. So yeah, I'm still kind of leaning towards the Yacht Master area. But yeah, I have to say, it's, oh God. And you know what? My business partner, who I work with in my real job outside of YouTube, is actually buying this, so it's not even going back to Moya's. It's going to my friends, and he's going to really enjoy it. Capo lavoro questo, meraviglia, strepitoso, all the rest of it. Do I prefer this over the previous Batman? Absolutely. In my opinion, while it will not have the same collectability or distinction of being the first bicolor ceramic GMT, this newer version does feel a more complete, evolved piece. Had they made a two-tone with yellow gold on a Jubilee, I think I would have made that jump. What we have here at the end of the day is the very best of Rolex, a true iconic and luxury watch in every single sense of the word. Is it the best GMT out there at the moment? I think quite possibly. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Please let me know what you think down in the comments about the, I was about to call it the Jason Voorhees. Even that's a better name than Batgirl. Anyway, what do you think? Yeah, let me know what you think of this watch. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. I think I've said that already. Okay, ciao.